Hello and welcome back. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you're following the 5 steps that I outline for reducing your fasting insulin and therefore improving your ability to be sensitive to insulin. And the specific constituents of that 5-member supplementation protocol are berberine, and then you've got your fiber. You also have apple cider vinegar, allulose, as well as TUDCA, taurine urso deoxyoxylic acid. And together, what these do is stabilize your blood sugar, prevent hypoglycemia. That's kind of what the first 3 do. And the last 2 are very important as far as raising GLP-1 levels. Together, what we want to do is give you good glycemic balance, reduce the risk of diabetes, and multiple other chronic illnesses that are brought about by poor insulin sensitivity. Okay? Now, what I'm going to be doing in this next series is going over each of those 5 things in detail. Not giving you a comprehensive list of all of the benefits, but giving you a much broader list than I gave you in that earlier video. Today, I'm going to start with fiber, specifically things like Metamucil. Metamucil is just a brand name for Psyllium. Now, I mostly use Psyllium as my fiber of choice. It's what I tend to recommend to my patients. However, you can use dextrin as well. Dextrin works pretty much almost as well as Psyllium. Either one are okay. I think dextrin might be a little cheaper, but there are some really great benefits to using Psyllium as your fiber source. Whichever one you use, either one is better than not using fiber at all. I'm starting with fiber for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is when I ask patients to get on this protocol. Now, I wouldn't recommend that you do the protocol unless we did labs on you and it turned out, aha, you are pre-diabetic. In other words, when I took a look at your fasting insulin and your fasting blood sugar, I did a little calculation and we calculated your home IR. Your home IR score, if I made the recommendation, was significantly above 1.5. Our goal is to get your home IR score to around 1.5 or less. All right. Now, generally speaking, when you're looking at your fasting insulin, the numbers we like to see are 7 or less. If it's above 7, then we want to get that down. The higher your fasting insulin, the more pre-diabetic that you are. Okay? So we want to fix that for you. And the reason that I'm starting with fiber is because this is the biggest favor I'm asking of you. Now, call it a favor. It's for you. It's not for me. This is for you. But it's really important that you follow the fiber protocol. And what is the protocol? Once again, the protocol is, if you're using the capsules, and I do recommend that you use the capsules, if you're having a small meal or a snack, these are 500 milligram capsules, okay? They're 500 milligram capsules. And if you have a small meal or a snack with carbs in it, with any type of carbohydrate, the recommendation is 4 capsules. So that would be 2 grams. If it's a moderate meal, it's six capsules, so that's 3 grams. And if it's a very large meal with lots of carbohydrates, then 8 capsules. That's a total of 4 grams. Now, you're probably going to eat twice or 3 times a day, so you're going to be consuming quite a bit. You're going to be consuming 8 to 12 grams of psyllium fiber a day if you follow that. And there are quite a few benefits to that. Now, I mentioned the benefit of stabilizing your blood sugar. Now, what does that do? When you consume, now you don't have to take the capsules. If you really despise the idea of capsules, you can take the fiber straight. So basically 2 teaspoons of this fiber, that's going to give you 4 grams. So that would be equivalent to 8 capsules. So 2 teaspoons is 8 capsules. So you take those 2 teaspoons, you mix it in with water or something sugarless, and you drink that down, preferably a half an hour to an hour before you eat. But even if it's during the meal or right before the meal, it's still better than not taking it. So you still have efficacy. It's just that ideally, you want the fiber in there a half an hour to an hour before. But 15 minutes or 5 minutes before, that's also effective. It's just not as effective as the longer, if you do it half an hour to an hour before. Okay. So anyway, so you can either do the teaspoons or the individual capsules. So what happens? Now, as I mentioned in the last video, when you take this fiber with water, it makes this slurry. It turns into this goop in your digestive tract. And that goop will then mix with the carbohydrates that you just ate, so that it's going to be much harder for your body to break those carbohydrates down and absorb those carbohydrates from your gut, because you've mixed it with this goopy slop. This slop, it's probably a bad word, but this goopy mixture with all this fiber, and that fiber holds the carbs in your GI tract for a longer time. So instead of that sugar hitting your bloodstream within 20 minutes to a half an hour, because that's what would normally happen. Now, you ate a bowl of rice, that's going to be pure glucose hitting your blood in 20 minutes to a half an hour. All right? Now, when you add the goop, when you add the fiber, it mixes in there, and it makes it much more difficult to get through your bowel wall into your blood, because it gets stuck in this gooey, gluey mixture. And so now, instead of your blood spiking in a half an hour, your blood sugar doesn't go up nearly as high, because you're restraining the speed at which the sugar leaves the bowel. Okay? So now your blood sugar goes up steadily, and it doesn't peak for like 3 to 5 hours. And the peak is not nearly as high. You've drastically reduced the height of that peak, so you're not seeing giant increases in your blood sugar, and your blood sugar stays stable for hours and hours, as opposed to this really sharp peak of blood sugar like 45 minutes later, and then your insulin levels, they peak, and you get massive insulin release from your pancreas, and that results in low blood sugar, because insulin causes all that blood sugar to rush into your fat cells, to rush into your muscle cells, and to leave the blood. And so, when all that sugar leaves the blood in response to insulin, now, an hour after you've eaten, you've got low blood sugar. And low blood sugar is the signal to eat. It makes you hungry, and it makes the food taste delicious. And so that fiber, by holding the bowel contents in the small intestine for a longer period, you end up with stable blood sugar. Not too high, not too low, but stable blood sugar for hours. You're not going to be hungry. It also has a bulk effect, and that bulk in your gut makes you feel full. So you don't have low blood sugar, that leads to a feeling of fullness, and you have the bulk sensation, that leads to fullness. So it reduces the likelihood that you are going to snack again, or that you are going to eat more. It reduces the likelihood of that. So those are the appetite benefits, okay, and the weight benefits. So I'm going to talk about some other benefits of using psyllium. Okay, let's start with the anti-cancer effects. It has anti-cancer effects, right? Colon cancer is a really big problem in the West. Because of our diet, because of the processed foods, because of our generally low fiber diet, we are prone to colon cancer. Colon cancer is the number 3 cancer in both men and women, okay? For men, the number 1 cancer is prostate cancer, followed by lung cancer, and that is followed by colon cancer. For women, the number 1 cancer is breast cancer, followed by lung cancer, and number 3, once again, is colon cancer, all right? So colon cancer is a big deal. It kills thousands of people, about 3,000 people a year, all right? So, and if it doesn't kill you, going through things like chemotherapy, well, that's not good for your future, because a lot of those chemotherapies have a pretty toxic effect on your body. A lot of these chemotherapies will wipe out stem cells, which really help, that adversely affects your future, because those stem cells can be used for repair. In your brain, those stem cells are important for nerve regeneration, and so you can end up with a brain fog that follows you into later life. So we don't want to get colon cancer. If we can prevent that, that would be awesome. Now, this is a very complicated topic. My PhD is actually in cancer genetics, and let me tell you, this is a very complicated scenario. A lot of things can predispose us to cancer. When you add fiber to your diet, specifically the fiber that is part of this protocol where you are consuming 8 to 12, maybe 16 grams of psyllium per day is going to have a significant impact with regard to reduction in your risk of colon cancer for a lot of reasons. Okay, now, again, this program is really, you're going to understand a lot more of this if you are a medical professional. So if you're a fellow physician, a medical assistant, a nurse practitioner, if you have a heavy science background in the biological sciences, you're going to appreciate this. If you don't, this may be a little difficult to follow along. I don't expect a lot of people to watch this. This is really for people that have an interest in the specifics and want to know more about all the benefits of going on my insulin reduction protocol. All right. So anyway, in order to understand some of these benefits, you need to understand something about how bile acid or bile salts work and what the benefits are. Okay, bile salts or bile acids are produced from cholesterol in your liver. So your liver takes the cholesterol from your blood and it turns those into bile salts. I might use bile salts and bile acids interchangeably because they are on a molecular basis, they are interchangeable, okay? So you make these bile acids in the liver, and they will collect in the gallbladder, and they will be dumped into the small intestine when you have a meal that has fat in it, because bile acids help you break down fat so you can digest it, okay? And your gallbladder, it stores these bile acids, and then when you have a lot of fat in your diet, the gallbladder will contract and squirt those bile acids into your small intestine, so it will mix with the fat, it'll emulsify the fat, and allow you to absorb it. Well, then what happens? Well, as the meal with the fat in it, as it moves through the small intestine, it gets to the last part of the small intestine, the ileum, and there, 5% of those bile acids will keep on going, and you'll poop it out the other end, okay? So 5% of those bile acids that your liver made will end up as waste product. The other 95% go through the bowel wall back into your blood through the portal vein, okay? So 95% of what you made is going to be recycled and shunted right back to the liver, where it will collect in the gallbladder once again to be reused. Now the thing is, while it's beneficial to have these bile acids and they help you digest those fats, in high concentration, if you have a lot of bile acid in your gut and your bowel is moving very slowly, then those bile salts are in contact with the gut wall for a long time. Okay? And as you reabsorb that 95%, as those bile acids are going through the walls of your bowel, that's not healthy to keep doing that. That's really not healthy for your bowel wall to be exposed to those bile salts who are violating them multiple times a day by going through the walls. Okay? It activates inflammation in the gut. So excessive bile acid exposure in your gut wall irritates the bowel wall and can be precancerous. Okay? Some of those bile acids are pretty carcinogenic. Now, it's much worse if you're constipated. If the bowel contents are moving very slowly and you have concentrated bile acids just sitting there in your gut right next to the gut wall, then the gut wall is going to be very unhappy. It's going to be inflamed, and with that inflammation, that disrupts your gut barrier. You know, you have the gut-blood barrier, and so normally you have nice tight junctions that prevent the bacteria from your bowels from getting into your blood. Well, with that inflammation from all these bile salts, that space gets widened because you have swelling from the inflammation and everything. And so that allows the contents of your bowel to squeeze their way into your blood. And that can increase inflammation throughout your whole body. So your risk of all forms of cancer goes up. When inflammation goes up, cancer risk goes up. What kind of cancer? Name it. Just about all cancers. Your risk for all cancers goes up as your inflammation goes up. All right? So what does that have to do with bile salts? Well, if you can reduce the amount of bile salts that are going through the gut wall, you reduce inflammation. If you can increase the transit time. What is constipation? Constipation is delayed transit time through the bowel. So those bowel contents, if they're like chop, 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 if they're going through the gut at a rapid rate, so you're constantly moving, then what happens? That means that the gut, the bile acids aren't always in contact with the same section of wall. All right, and so that's going to reduce that exposure. Therefore, you reduce inflammation. Therefore, you strengthen the gut wall barrier. Okay, and by reducing inflammation in this way, you're reducing cancer risk. All right. So when you're using a bulk laxative, because that's what the psyllium is, it's a bulk laxative, not like those other laxatives that just irritate the bowel wall and make it go faster. A bulk laxative naturally helps to propel the food contents through the gut at a faster pace. And that also dilutes the bile acids. So instead of getting concentrated, because what happens is this: when you have your bowel contents, the crap inside your GI tract, right? When it's sitting there in contact with the bowel wall is doing something to the crap. What's it doing? It's sucking it. It's sucking the water out of it. The whole time, the bowel wall is not just sitting there as a barrier, it's sucking on the doo-doo, okay? So that stuff inside your gut is getting sucked on, and all the water's getting pulled out, so it's getting harder and harder. Not only is it getting harder, which you want, because otherwise you'd have like diarrhea all the time, so we want it to suck out that extra water, right? But as it's sucking on it, it's making the bile acids more concentrated. And the more concentrated those bile acids are, the more carcinogenic the effect is. So when you take these, when you take the fiber, when you take the psyllium, that bulk laxative speeds up the transit time, so it's not going to be as concentrated, it's not going to be in contact with the same section of bowel wall, and so by reducing the bile acid concentration and by reducing the transit time, you are therefore reducing the amount of inflammation and damage that the bile acids can do, and you're reducing the risk of cancer. Okay? All right, so to recap this mechanism, the fiber, the psyllium, traps the bile acids in your GI tract, and it prevents them from being reabsorbed. So normally 95% of those bile acids would be reabsorbed and therefore go through the bowel wall as we described. So the fiber holds the bile salts, it holds the bile acids in your gut, so you end up eliminating them when you go to the bathroom. So those bile salts, those that would have gone into your portal vein and been recycled, the recycling doesn't take place. So that forces your liver to take more cholesterol from your blood to make brand new bile salts. All right, so now you got to produce those 95% of bile salts that were lost when you went to the bathroom. You lost those. Those normally would have been recycled. So your liver has to work harder. It's got to take cholesterol from your blood to make new bile salts. Well, guess what? That means it's going to reduce your LDL cholesterol. Well, where have you heard that before? Yeah, that's the bad cholesterol. So when you take fiber, like psyllium, in the amount that we're suggesting here, you are going to drop your LDL cholesterol significantly, which reduces your risk of atherosclerosis. Because if that LDL cholesterol goes into your blood vessels, what does it do? It makes blood vessels stiffer. It makes atherosclerosis more likely, leading to cardiovascular and cerebrovascular and peripheral vascular disease. Okay, so we have some significant cardiovascular benefits there. All right, so with fewer bile acids being recycled, your liver senses the shortage and it ramps up production of the bile salts. It boosts an enzyme called cholesterol 7-alpha hydroxylase, and the shorthand for that is CYP7A1. CYP7A1. So when you increase the production of CYP7A1, magical healthy things happen. CYP7A1 is what we call a factory starter for new bile acids from cholesterol. Studies show that psyllium directly ups the CYP7A1 activity and gene expression, leading to more bile acids overall. But here's the twist. Unlike using medicine, pharmaceutical agents that are harsh binders of cholesterol that just deplete bile acids, and therefore dropping your serum levels, psyllium somehow increases bile acids in your local bloodstream. So if you measure bile acids in your blood, they go up. Now, why would you want bile acids in your blood? Well, researchers think that psyllium tweaks genes for bile acid secretion and transport, like uprating transporters in the gut and liver. So even as some get excreted, more flood into the circulation. So what happens when you have these bile acids in your blood circulation? Well, that activates a very important receptor called FXR. The effect that it has is incredible, and this is what you need to remember. FXR. Those bile acids stimulate or upregulate the activity of something called the farnesoid X receptor, FXR. Farnesoid X receptor, FXR, when it is activated, it is a master control switch that globally reduces inflammation. You have receptors for FXR on your gut cells, on your immune cells, and throughout the liver. Okay? And when it is stimulated, it dampens inflammation. So we see a reduction in tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 1 beta, interleukin 6, swelling, all the aspects of inflammation throughout your body, and especially in your GI tract. It reduces inflammation. And by reducing inflammation, you are reducing your risk of colon cancer. It also reduces the risk of inflammatory bowel diseases such as Crohn's disease. Okay? So really, really important. That is another major mechanism by which adding this fiber to your diet can reduce your risk of colon cancer. Psyllium at 4 to 8 grams per meal can decrease inflammatory markers such as C-reactive protein, tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 1 beta, especially in the gut. And it does so by modulating bile acid metabolism and activating the farnesoid X receptor, which suppresses pro-inflammatory signaling. Now, I can say a whole lot more about this, but if I do, half of you are going to go to sleep on me, so hopefully that's enough to help to bring it home that using this wing of the insulin reduction protocol is not only going to benefit you with regard to weight management and sugar management, but also significantly reducing your risk of the third most common cancer known to man. Farnesoid X receptor acts like a control button. When bile acids press this button, the farnesoid X receptor tells your body to quiet down the inflammation alarms. It does this by blocking a troublemaker called NF-kappa beta. NF-kappa beta. That's like a loud siren that makes your body produces chemicals like tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukins and causes swelling and redness. So by calming NF-kappa beta, the FXR, the farnesoid X receptor, keeps inflammation from getting out of control, because it does that. Once inflammation starts going, you end up with a positive feedback loop, and inflammation breeds more inflammation. So the use of this fiber is a mechanism to calm down gastrointestinal excessive inflammation. Bile acids, especially when their levels are balanced, help to keep your gut healthy. A healthy gut means less leaky walls where bad stuff like germs can sneak through and start inflammation. By making the right amount of bile acids, your body keeps the gut strong, which stops inflammation from spreading to places like your liver or blood vessels. Activation of FXR also protects against colitis and hangover-related liver inflammation by downregulating genes like CYP2E1 and ADH1, and it reduces colonic interleukin 22 expression as well. So just, I'm throwing this in as a freebie in our discussion of reduced risk of colon cancer, but it's a global ticket in that it's reducing gastrointestinal inflammation across the board. So all those other illnesses that are associated with GI inflammation can be helped by adding fiber to your diet. Now, I alluded to this in my cancer discussion just a minute ago, but it also helps your cardiovascular health by reducing your LDL cholesterol levels by the mechanism that I just described. Consuming psyllium husk has strong evidence for improving lipid profiles by significantly lowering total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol levels without affecting your HDL. So we're not going to lower the good cholesterol. It has no effect there. So your good cholesterol stays where it is. Only the bad cholesterols are reduced. This is achieved through binding of the bile acids in the gut and promoting their excretion, therefore reducing cholesterol reabsorption. It forces the liver to constantly suck the cholesterol from your blood so that it can make more bile acids to make up for the ones that you pooped out because of the fiber. Now, psyllium intake, using psyllium fiber as a supplement has also been associated with modest blood pressure reduction. People that when you take psyllium as a supplement, blood pressure has been shown to go down. Now, is that because of cholesterol lowering? And when you reduce cholesterol, that's going to make your blood vessels less stiff, and that could therefore lead to the reduced blood pressure. There may be other mechanisms involved, but that's just the one that I can think of that might explain why blood pressure tends to go down when you add psyllium to your diet. It counteracts risk factors like hypertriglyceridemia, high cholesterol, hypertension, hyperglycemia. And in the meta-analyses, we saw significant reductions in systolic blood pressure by maybe about 2.5 millimeters of mercury. So not huge, but across the board, definitely notable reductions in blood pressure. Now, I'm not going to discuss the metabolic effects because I did that in the last video. So everything I said in the last video, insert here for the benefits regarding the risk for prediabetes and diabetes. All right, psyllium acts as a prebiotic. What's the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic? Probiotics are actual microorganisms that will colonize, that will live in your gut and hopefully do beneficial things for you, right? That's a probiotic. Those are healthy bacteria, and there's lots of good examples of those guys. Fiber, such as we see in psyllium, as a prebiotic. What we mean by that is that this provides food for the good bacteria. The bacteria in our GI tracts that are really beneficial when you provide nutrients for them so that the good bacteria can survive and thrive. Together, that would be thrive, right? Okay. But in order for the good bacteria to survive and thrive, you need to provide food for them. And psyllium is a great food for the good bacteria. And when the good bacteria, when they win out over the less good bacteria, the benefits to your overall health are amazing, including your psychological health. So we want to feed the good bacteria with nice prebiotics, which psyllium is a great prebiotic. Psyllium supplementation positively alters the gut microbiota by increasing beneficial bacteria, boosting microbial diversity, and supporting fermentation that produces short-chain fatty acids for gut health, okay? So what do I mean by that? Well, you're feeding the good bacteria, and one of the things that helps you identify the good bacteria as good bacteria produce substances that are good for you. And those include especially short-chain fatty acids. We want bacteria in our gut that make short-chain fatty acids. That short-chain fatty acids are associated with reduced cancer risk. They literally help your bowel cells to recognize if they start turning cancer and you have short-chain fatty acids available, that will help those cells to realize, hey, I'm turning into a cancer. I need to commit suicide because I don't want to grow up and be a cancer. Boom. Okay, that's what short-chain fatty acids do for you. So you want your gut bacteria to make lots of short-chain fatty acids so that your bowel cells will be able to quickly recognize if they start to turn bad, if they start to turn into cancer cells. Psyllium consumption remodels the gut microbiota. And what does that mean, gut microbiota? When I say microbiome or microbiota, those are all of the trillions of organisms that are living in your gut, and that includes many species. Just like if you go to Africa, you see all these different animals are all different species. Well, that's what you got going down here, okay? All those organisms, there are many different species doing different things. You got your bad actors like your hyenas and your snakes, and you got your good actors like your giraffes and stuff, okay? So anyway, yeah, you got a whole zoo going on down here. And so when you consume lots of psyllium, you're feeding the good guys, especially beneficial bacteria like the Bacteroidetes, okay? And these boost short-chain fatty acid production. They also enhance stool water content. You want that, okay? That alleviates constipation, also helps prevent diarrhea, and reduces your risk of cancer by diluting the bile acids. And what you're doing is you are helping to prevent gut dysbiosis. And what do we mean by gut dysbiosis? That means that you have predominantly a lot of bad bacteria that are producing substances that are bad for you and that are pro-inflammatory. And so they're making inflammation in your gut and throughout your body higher, which puts you at risk for multiple diseases, both gastrointestinal diseases as well as general pathology throughout your body. Now, how do you know if you're doing this insulin reduction protocol and you're taking the fiber? How can you know that you're getting these healthier bacteria, that you're getting the short-chain fatty acids? Well, there's a very simple test. It's not very scientific, but it works very well. When you are getting these shifts in your microbiome to the less toxic ones, it's going to affect bathroom smells, okay? People that have a lot of sugar in their diet, they're eating the Western diet with a lot of these preservatives and fast foods, that tends to promote gut dysbiosis. And one symptom of gut dysbiosis is smelly bathroom experience. You know what I'm talking about. When you have to go through two cans of air freshener every time you go to the bathroom. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I'm talking about, all right? When you have gut dysbiosis, the smell that you get after a bowel movement is pretty bad. There's lots of nasty stuff that's being produced. The fermentation, these are called proteolytic-based organisms, and you're getting some pretty nasty fermentation and what we call malodorous volatile compounds. So you're seeing a lot of sulfur, a lot of ammonia, a lot of indole-based odors. So we call those pungent fecal odors. Psyllium acts as a prebiotic fiber, and it selectively promotes the growth of saccharolytic bacteria that ferment carbohydrates into short-chain fatty acids, such as butyrate, acetate, and propionate. These short-chain fatty acids are generally odorless or have mild, non-offensive scents, like vinegar or for acetate, for example. And this contributes to gut health without producing foul volatiles. So, when you go to the bathroom and your crap doesn't stink as bad, and you're going to notice that, that tells you that you've been doing the diet properly and that it's altered your gut biome. When you go from malodorous to less offensive odors in the bathroom, that is your sign that you now have a healthier gut microbiome and that you're getting these short-chain fatty acids like butyrate and propionate and acetate. You're getting less of the hydrogen sulfide, which is your rotten egg smell, and your indoles and your scattles. Ooh, scattles. Ugh. That's where you get the word scatologic. That's doo-doo-like, right? So you don't want that. You want the less pungent odors. Now, the acetate, the butyrate, what's really helpful to understand about those guys is that these have really significant anti-cancer properties right there. So those short-chain fatty acids upregulate P53. People with low P53 activation are at increased risk for colon cancer. P53 helps the cell to recognize when it is starting to be transformed, when it is turning into a polyp or a cancer. It helps it to recognize that it needs to do apoptosis, it needs to commit suicide. And so the likelihood of having a cell turn into a cancer cell is much lower. So that's another reason why you want to be taking psyllium on a regular basis, because you want to increase p53 expression so that you will help to reduce the risk that if your cells do decide to become transformed, if they do decide to become cancerous, you're not going to get cancer, because those cells will recognize that they're going bad and they will self-delete. So that is another mechanism by which using fibers such as psyllium has beneficial anti-cancer properties. And you get an idea that that's what you have going for you when your crap doesn't stink as much. It tells you you've got a more diverse microbiome, and we've shifted away from the proteolytic group, okay? So basically, psyllium restores the gastrointestinal balance in favor of healthy bacteria and away from dysbiosis, which results in stool that is less putrid, okay? You know, you can't get rid of Clostridium. Clostridium is a bad actor. Clostridium, you're going to have Clostridium in your GI tract no matter what. They live in their own little neighborhoods, and what keeps them from overtaking your bowel are the good bacteria. So by using fiber, such as with psyllium, you are enhancing your good bacteria population, so they act as police to make sure that the bad actors don't overpopulate and make you sick with something like C. difficile. So, by increasing fiber availability, psyllium suppresses these proteolytic species, these bad bacteria, through competitive exclusion and pH lowering. Okay, that's another mechanism by which they keep the bad bacteria under control. They're producing these short-chain fatty acids, which are acidic. And when you make the stool more acidic, the bad bacteria don't like that. Okay, so you are not just, favoring the growth of the good bacteria by giving them the food that they like. They are then producing these short-chain fatty acids, which are reducing your risk of cancer, but these short-chain fatty acids are making the stool more acidic. I mean, we're not talking about acidic like sulfuric acid that's going to burn you. No, just dropping the pH a little bit, but dropping the pH that little bit makes it much more difficult for the bad bacteria, the proteolytic bacteria like Clostridium and other bad foul-smelling bacteria. That acid environment makes it harder for them, and this reduces the relative abundance of the odor-generating bacteria, and the fiber creates faster transit time, which reduces the time available for bacteria to produce stinky volatile substances from proteins and fats, leading to less accumulation of hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, and phenols and stuff like that. Okay? So, hopefully, this is not, by any means, this is not a comprehensive assessment as to all the benefits of adding psyllium, such as we see with my insulin reduction protocol here, but this gives you an idea as to it gives you a broader idea as to just how beneficial adding fiber to your diet will be, all right? Again, this is not comprehensive, but I really want to stress to you that this is a really important part of my insulin reduction protocol. It's not just reducing your fasting insulin. We're talking overall health. It can reduce your cholesterol, reduces your blood pressure, reduces your risk of cancer, especially colon cancer, as well as the positive effect on your satiety, as well as the reduction in your blood sugar and your fasting insulin levels. So tons of benefits. All this to say, it's worth it. It is trouble taking all those pills. I know it's trouble. It's different, but it's worth it. If you care about your future, if you care about your health, and you don't want to run into a lot of chronic illnesses that people normally run into with age, if you want to avoid that, please use the fiber. Now, I didn't even talk about the cognitive benefits. We do have examples from animal models that it actually helps to improve cognition. When you have chronically high blood pressure, it causes periventricular white matter changes in the deep parts of your brain, where the changes in blood pressure literally kill off white matter in the brain prematurely. And in animal models, when you supplement with fiber, that helps to prevent that damage. And so presumably in humans, we can probably expect the same thing. So not only do we get those slight reductions in blood pressure, we also have a way to help reduce some of the vascular dementia that can happen with age due to poor cardiovascular health. Okay, so lots of benefits. So keep that in mind, and I'll see you in the next video where we will be discussing the benefits of berberine. Okay, see you next time. Thanks for watching.